Welcome to the Melinda Eitzen Show. I'm Melinda. Today we have with us Lindsey Obenhaus from Goranson Bain. Excellent lawyer. I know because I mediate for her a lot. She knows what she's doing. She's also techie and knows about artificial intelligence. So we're going to talk about that and how it affects our practice of law. Welcome, Lindsey.
Good morning. How are you?
So good. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So besides being a brilliant lawyer, you actually know some technical things.
I might know a thing or two. Yeah. Well, I'm actually a subscriber to it out of convenience. It makes our lives as attorneys so much easier. And so I've kind of fallen into this area of expertise where I've started using these products because I love them. And then people have started coming to me with questions, and it's been great.
And you serve on some statewide committees.
Yes, I'm on the State Bar of Texas Technology Committee. I'm also on the AAML, the American Academy of Matrimonial Lawyers Technology Committee, and I also am chairing the Goranson Bain Ausley Technology Committee.
So you have a lot. You have too much free time, apparently.
I guess so. Luckily, AI saves me a lot of time, so it helps.
So what is AI? I have never one time used AI that I know of. So I'm sure there's other people like me who don't know. I mean, they've heard of it, but they really don't understand how to utilize it or what it does. So what is artificial intelligence?
Yeah. So the easiest way to understand it is the ability of a computer to communicate in a way that is human-like, but also able to reason, understand, retain knowledge, perform tasks that you would expect of an intelligent being to do, which is kind of mind-blowing given it's just metal and plastic.
Yes.
But they're able to kind of learn from past experiences, synthesize information, things like that. So it's really the ability to learn and then communicate back to you. That's really important for us.
So how would people use it in their family law practice or divorce law practice?
Right. So I always boil it down to two main applications that surely every area of industry is going to be affected by AI and its abilities. But for family law attorneys specifically, it's really good at two things right now that are easy to understand. It's really good at creating words, so communicating and writing things. It's also really good at reviewing words, so giving it large data sets and asking it to summarize it or create a timeline or something like that. It can organize. So reviewing words and creating words, which are two pretty big things that we as family law attorneys and our staff do all the time.
Yes. So let's say, give an example, a specific example of something you might have used or would use AI for.
Sure. So just this morning, I had some email backlog from yesterday, clients asking me questions in their emails and things like that. And so what I did was I skimmed the emails, but I didn't have time to answer each and every one in order to be here on time. And so without using client names, I plugged them into the tool that I use, which is Microsoft Copilot. I plug in the body of the email and I said, I'm a Texas family law attorney, generate a sample response to these client emails to respond to their questions. And it would prompt me with a boilerplate template email to copy paste into Outlook. It tried to answer the questions, but that's not what I would normally do. And so I deleted the answers and then did that. It probably saved me 10 minutes per email of just creating the, filler. So that was one thing I did just today.
That's great. It kind of sounds like it can kind of be like an assistant.
Exactly. And so I think it's important to realize that AI and the tools that we'll talk about today are not replacements for lawyers. AI cannot give legal advice. AI cannot give tax advice. It cannot cure your medical problems, anything like that. It's not a human. And so it's really more like your supercharged sidekick or your supercharged legal assistant to help you and enhance your practice, to kind of boost up and save you time rather than replace a core job responsibility.
And if it saves us time, that saves our clients some money.
Exactly. I think the convenience and the time-saving aspects of it are huge for us in the sense that often how we bill and charge our clients, is based on that. I think there's huge implications for letting us do the job that we're best at, which is advocating for our clients' positions, analyzing the law, solving difficult people problems and legal problems, but also it'll help save the clients on the bottom line, potentially.
Yeah. So we've all used historically kind of forms that are starters for our pleadings because, in a divorce, there's always a petition for divorce. So we have a form generating software that we've had for years and years, and then we have to specialize it to our case. Would you see AI doing things like that, or even maybe beyond that basic form generation to actually briefing?
Yes, those are out there right now. And I like that goes back to what I said. The two jobs that it does is it can review words and create words. And so, for example, I just did a demo with Westlaw for their new co-counsel software. And that's really what it advertises itself to do, is to be able to synthesize, here's a deposition transcript of wife. Give me a timeline of the events based on this. And now let's do a deposition of her boyfriend and give me questions for that. And it will help you generate that. But also it will help you brief. It can help you draft pleadings. And in the sense that we're accustomed, as a lot of lawyers are, to the form building software where, you click certain buttons, and we have our drafting program where you type in basic information and it populates the data in a form. That's similar, but you can probably give it even easier prompts, more dummy proof prompts. Almost like you would give your associate or your paralegal instructions to maybe draft a decree, like we need JMC with a geo restriction, and we want this for the retirements without a quadro or something like that. You can probably give it some prompts like that, and it can learn to populate a decree based on that.
When you say it learns, does it learn based on my inputs, or is it just learning based on the world's inputs?
A little bit of both. And so one thing I was just explaining to someone recently is when you think about what these AI tools are, is they're large language models. And it's hard to understand what that really is because we've never had that in the world before. And so what these companies have done is they've created a large, vast data set of words and information for these computers and bots to read and analyze and then learn from to answer your questions. And so when you're asking those things, it will take information that it's sourced from its database to answer that. So that's helpful in like ChatGPT and things like that. It'll generate information from the internet. When you're looking at legal specific software, it not only has a large language model like ChatGPT, but also it's trained from lawyers, and it's trained from case law. It's trained from previous briefs. It's trained from other things. So it has a legal element already built into its analysis and what it spits out at you.
Oh, that's great. Does it learn from what I've told it in the past once I start using it?
Yes.
Oh, that's really
helpful. Yes, it can. So you can create prompts. For example, I was using it to just create some inspiration for deposition questions. You know how when you're drafting and you start, you're in a funk and you just need some inspiration. So I had some deposition questions popping up, and I would ask it, okay, based on that last set that you gave me, give me more questions about this specific type of business. How to value this specific type of business, for example.
Oh.
And it gave me more. And it just gets you started, right? Like these are not the actual questions I may use, maybe not, but it gets me started on, okay, I see where it's going. And so it's really kind of a helpful tool that saves me time and brainstorming and research, and potentially even bringing in one of my colleagues to assist on an expert issue or something like that. It can really help generate ideas.
We say briefing, and we know what that means, but for any listener who doesn't know, what's the difference in filling out the petition for divorce and briefing? What does briefing mean?
Right. So briefing is when you have a certain position or argument that you're trying to convince a judge or a tribunal to accept. So, I'm right on this issue because, and then you write all your authority out that supports your argument. And so what some of these programs can do, like I'm just using Westlaw co-counsel because I just watched the demo. But what some of these can do is you can say, okay, here's the issue that I'm researching right now. What are the best cases that support that? What are the cases that I should be worried about and should distinguish against? And it will help you organize that and even synthesize an outline brief for you.
That's awesome. So It's stating the law. It's becoming aware of the cases that support your position or not, to distinguish, like, hey, this one seems like it's not, but that's because the statute changed since that case or something like that.
Correct.
Oh, that's very powerful.
Yeah.
So one thing that we have to be very cautious about as lawyers is confidentiality for our clients.
Right.
So how do we protect that while we're dumping information into these databases?
I know that's a huge concern that there's really not a lot of discussion about right now because it's so new in the process. And so for now, the best practice is don't use client names anywhere. Anytime you're putting it into a Copilot or a GPT or a Claude or something like that, when you're using it, just don't use client names. If you don't know where it's going, don't use your client's names. Don't use distinguishing things about it. So use it as generally as you possibly can. But other concerns that people can have is, you want to be able to look at when you subscribe to these companies, for example, looking at their privacy policies. If I'm uploading a large data set to a software company to review, how long do they keep that for? When do I get it back? Do they keep a copy of it? These are questions that you need to be asking the reps when they're trying to sell you these products to understand how you can protect your client confidentiality. The third level of it is also just informing your client. Some lawyers may want to consider putting something in their contract about using AI.
That's smart.
Right? And having authorization up front to go ahead and use these tools. But other products, and it depends on what you're using and how you're using it. For example, some companies may charge per use. And so I can say, hey, client A, we got this big stack of discovery. We have 5,000 pages to review. I'm happy to have my associate take a look at it over the next 2 weeks and analyze it for us. Or for, $400, we can upload it to this program and it will help us analyze it in a more efficient way and provide us with X, Y, and Z data from it. We'll have to review it, but it'll take us significantly less time. Do you want to approve that or not? And just get their authorization to use it, approve the cost and things like that, just like you would hire an expert.
Right. Now, I've heard that in the financial world, that the financial experts have had something similar to this around longer.
Yes, my understanding is that they have had these secret programs where that will help them analyze large sets of data and really spreadsheet model type stuff where it'll help distinguish outliers and patterns and things like that. Also helping them understand what's missing from a data set. So like in divorce where we have tracing experts, their software that they can choose to subscribe to has those features. Now that's become more popular and easier to apply to other tools. Family lawyers are now able to have this as well.
Gosh, I wish I'd known they were doing that all this time.
I know. They've been hiding it from us. We needed to get that software.
I know. Give it to me.
Right?
Because in any case, we always need to know what are we missing, right?
Right. I think that's huge. When we talk to clients and when we talk to just amongst other divorce professionals about the timeline of a case, you've got your initial pleading and then you've got your temporary orders kind of phase. And then I always kind of tell my client, then we enter the discovery phase. And that's the big question mark phase where it could go very quickly and smoothly, or you can imagine it going up in flames. AI can be the fire extinguisher for that because of its ability to take the large data set, the big slog of discovery, and say, hey, chatbot, what's missing? And it'll generate a deficiency letter.
Yes.
That technology is out there right now.
That's amazing.
It's amazing.
Now, of course, you're going to have to put the statements in there.
Yes.
So that's where you have to be cautious about, is this going to be kept confidential?
HIPAA, privacy concerns.
Yes.
I have a couple of cases where documents are not in English, so not helpful there. So there are obviously some things that it cannot do, or that it will do wrong. It may not always get everything accurate, right? Which is why it does not replace our eyes looking at it, reviewing it, and digging through ourselves as well. But
Makes
it
it
is
faster.
much faster. It's a starting point. It's a launch pad for us. Yeah.
So you mentioned before we started that there's an ADR component in the AI world. And I said, oh no, I don't want to lose my mediation job.
No, this fascinates me. Like this kind of gets into like that whole like matrix level stuff. Like, are we going to put on our Oculus glasses and go to a robot mediator next? Like, people are probably thinking this is where it's going, but I don't. So I do see as kind of next horizon, next level stuff. Some of these companies providing risk analysis and almost predictions on outcomes based on positions and context, ages, income levels, data that you can put in. And these are specific tools. These are not regular tools that are out there right now, but they're in the world right now. Like Lex Machina that has collected data on mostly federal judges around the country and has kind of a predictor index of how outcomes will go for large federal disputes. But there is a way that AI can help synthesize two different positions and generate a compromise of those positions. I mean, there's companies out there doing it right now for prenups and things like that when people can fill out forms and it'll just spit out, a prenup that kind of mutually combines their goals. That's there. And some people may love that, right? There's an access to justice component. There's a cost saving component. But I mediate with you all the time. And it doesn't take out the necessity in family law cases of compassion. AI does not listen to you. AI does not know what it's like to raise children or your children. And it won't hear your story at all. And I can think of many clients of mine that we can spit out a proposal to them and they're like, well, that's not what I'm going to do for my kids.
Right.
So it doesn't replace that. But I do see that as a potential direction that this will take in our industry that we should be watching for.
It could be another piece of data we use in mediation, right? Is as the mediator, just like sometimes we have to go to, well, what would the judge do, right? If we're hoping to help them find common ground based on both sides' interests, needs, and concerns. But when they can't do that, then sometimes we have to start talking about, well, what would the judge do? And let's just try to get as close to that or better than that as we can, so you don't have to pay for the privilege of finding out what the judge would do. I could see AI helping us with that piece, right? Hey, let's put it in the computer and see what the computer says.
Yeah, I do think there are some interesting tools for ADR that you could use AI for. That's one of them. But again, I think it's going to be challenging for ADR to replace a very highly skilled mediator with high conflict cases. It just can't do it. I do think one of the applications that I've experienced as a mediator too, of having, tricky agreements to draft.
Yes.
Where you have people come up with a great idea, a great compromise, really out of the box. And you're like, bingo,
how do we draft this?
How do I write that though? This is that tool. And also as the mediator, you're like, oh, great. We've got to be done by 5 and I've got to draft this right now. It's like taking a test sometimes that these can help you quickly generate words to propose.
Oh, that's a great idea.
Like how do I draft a geographic restriction that's enforceable if this or that, or, all sorts of, I could see collaborative being a useful application for these drafting solutions too, where you're coming up with really creative.
Those decrees are so hard.
I've heard. And
they are the worst. Yeah, that's a great idea.
But it's a starting place, right? Where you're going outside of the forms, outside of the family law practice manual, and you don't know how to start, and it will kind of just give you that instant kind of boost of creativity and just a boilerplate that you can look at and edit rather than making the wheel from scratch.
Yes. Oh, I love it. Well, also personally, like outside the law, every human being could utilize this for, I'm just sitting here thinking, well, when I have to do a flyer for the organization where I'm organizing the luncheon,
right.
Make me a flyer that is for a women's lunch about blah, blah, blah.
Right. It's amazing what it can do. I mean, it can create images and things like that it's remarkable what it can do. And I think, one of the potential pitfalls of this is the creative application is wonderful for people who want to create content. If anybody listening uses Canva, which most of our marketing people probably were like, oh yeah, Canva's everywhere. It's mostly AI now. Like you can click an AI button and it'll like enhance your thing and add all sorts of branding and stuff to it automatically. It's pretty neat. But the creative applications are wonderful if you work in that industry, like music and entertainment and all of that, but you end up with copyright issues, right?
Oh.
And then think about it. If you're in a custody litigation case and someone has altered an image or generated an image and nobody can tell, can you imagine how devastating that would be?
Yeah, that's a problem because we do rely upon in abuse cases, and I know your background is in the district attorney's office.
Yeah, I was a protective order prosecutor.
So you did a lot of abuse cases. It's very common to have pictures of the damage, of the harm, of the bruises, blood, whatever. If you could just easily put bruises on where they weren't, take bruises off where they were, that's going to be a problem.
Absolutely. I think that's going to be a huge issue that is going to be very soon on our radars of how do we train our attorney eyes to kind of know the common red flags of an AI edited
Yes.
image. Is there a watermark? We all joke about hands. Like if you know about the Kate Middleton scandal, she had a photo that was released while she was she was trying to stay out of the public eye, and she released a photo of her and her kids on Mother's Day, saying "Happy Mother's Day," kind of proof of life photo. But it was quickly realized that it was a edited image, and one of the tells was her hands were a little unusual. AI doesn't generate hands very well.
Look at the hands. And
Right.
if they've cut the hands off, that's a bad sign.
Yes, exactly. Or they're like really
They're
long,
hiding
or
the
they're-
hands.
Yeah, they're sitting on their hands. Yeah. But there's all sorts of applications, and I think reputable companies, the ones that we would be subscribing to as professionals, they're all going to have watermarks on their images, things that would tell that these were assisted with the use of this certain software. They're going to be branded
see.
to some extent, and that helps the integrity of the image, right?
Yes.
We as professionals are required to bring the most authentic evidence to the tribunal. If
Yes.
it's not authentic, we have to say what it is and what it depicts and why. We can't always authenticate some of these, and that's going to be one of the next issues that we deal with of how to authenticate some of these images if we don't know.
I know my husband used to be a private investigator, and he would, for his photography, when he would be following people who were maybe doing things they shouldn't do. And when he took a picture, it would generate the date, the time, and the longitude and latitude. So it would kind of help support that the picture is where it represents to be on the date it was taken. He didn't have to remember either because it just printed that on the photo. And maybe there's things like that where our clients could have something in their phone to help prove this is the original image.
Yes.
And I don't know exactly what that would be, but I could see that could be something that Apple and Samsung, help develop to say this really is what it appears to be.
That's correct. Yeah.
And of course, they have to testify to that, but sometimes they lie.
Sometimes.
And we want them to tell the truth. But that would be, I think judges need to be alerted and lawyers that.
Right. And it can create convincing audio too. Like I was listening to Spotify with my 9-year-old son, and we were like, oh, wow, there's a new Drake song. And we were, listening, and I looked at it because my son said, add it to my playlist. It was not Drake. It turned out that was an AI generated song that was meant to sound like Drake and mimic the style of Drake, which huge copyright issues. I'm sure Drake's lawyers are all over this. But it's alarming how it can generate really convincing audio. It's out there. And so imagine somebody saying, oh, well, I recorded this conversation and it sounds just like someone's voice admitting to something or saying something.
Yes.
There's all sorts of risk applications for this that are going to be inherent. When we look at the news, when we review criminal law cases, that risk is going to be pervasive in our society now that it's out there. And we as family lawyers are going to have to absorb that risk and figure out how to help clients through and help assist the court in understanding what's real and what's not.
Somebody could deny and say that must be AI, even if it's real.
Right. And how would you prove it? I don't know.
Oh my gosh. Well, this is all reasons that mediation is good.
Yep. Stay out of court if you can.
Settle your case. Consider collaborative because it's getting harder. Well, I've heard of a deep fake video before, and that seems like it's along the same lines, right?
Correct.
It's a video made that is not true at all. It's not really filming someone doing that.
Yes.
It's artificial. So, this
And
is
I think
nerve-wracking.
an interesting issue that I just thought of this week too was, hearsay. For example, I was reading interrogatory answers, which is a fancy English word for questions lawyers can ask a person and they have to respond in writing. And I was reading interrogatory answers, and one of them just seemed so odd. It was not my client's. And I thought, gosh, did ChatGPT write that?
Oh.
And, it made me want to put ROG answers or questions into ChatGPT and see what it spits out. And is that similar? Is that the same answer?
Oh, that's interesting.
Right,
And
and
would
so-
it duplicate it like that?
Exactly. And so, but also, okay, so we can, it's kind of useful tool in family law cases to tell what's authentic, what's genuine from
Yes.
people, what's real, but also, is it hearsay? if they swore to it and all of that, did they adopt that language as their own? Is it hearsay? So I think there's also some cool evidentiary challenges that are going to arise probably through the courts of appeals and things like that that we'll hear about.
And
we're
it
gonna be on
always
the front
takes a
lines.
while. It takes a while for the appellate courts to catch up with this stuff.
Right? Like the use of emojis and things like that. Yeah. So this is next.
This is next. Well, I'm excited. I'm going to go learn how to do it. And you mentioned Copilot. Is that free?
There's free versions of most every GPT out there, and they're limited versions where the bot is providing a certain set of data, but not all the data that they have.
Oh, I want
right?
the best.
And so, but it's not that expensive to use this stuff. And I really recommend you do this is you can look, there's popular ones. I use Copilot because I wanted to pick one and get really good at it. So I picked Copilot. It's already on my computer.
And that's a Microsoft product.
It's built into Microsoft. Most Microsoft computers are going to come with Copilot on it, just like they do with Word,
convenient.
PowerPoint, right?
Oh,
Outlook.
Copilot.
Right. There might be potential synthesis with Outlook.
Because they're
and
your
things like that.
co-pilot.
Right.
They're
right.
your helper.
That's exactly what it's supposed to be. But there's Claude is a very popular one that I've heard a lot about.
How do you spell that?
CLAUDE.
Okay.
Claude.ai. And then there's other ones. I mean, I know a lot of people just use ChatGPT and use a paid version. And then I think there's one called Case Text that's really good at generating, legal documents and things like that. There's all sorts, but I use Copilot. And yeah, it's really neat. It's only $20 a month for all of it. And it will, for example, calculate, the timeline for your discovery deadlines or things like that. Like that, things your legal assistant would do, but it takes about 6 seconds.
6 seconds. That our clients are going to benefit because we can save them time there and spend our time in other areas of their case,
I think the areas where we as knowledge professionals help our clients the most, it's not doing the tasks that these GPT
that AI
models
can do, correct.
right? So they help us. They're like having a supercharged legal assistant.
Yes.
And it also can help our legal assistants so that we can serve more clients or do better job editing it and making sure everything's perfect. And, all of the work that we get in our jobs every day, it will help save time for us to do the things that we're best at.
We're going to make this our next internal CLE, continuing education.
It. Yeah, I think a lot of firms should be talking about this. And especially if you have associates and younger attorneys, I promise you they're already using it. Your clerks are going to come in. They're already drafting using this technology anyways. And so you should be getting ahead of it and not learning from them.
Oh, great. Thank you so much, Lindsey. This was very helpful to me personally.
This was great.
Hopefully to our listening audience. I appreciate you being here. So you're with Goranson Bain Ausley.
Yes, ma'am.
And that you all have just opened another office, I think.
Midland.
Oh my gosh, that's exciting. I used to
Yeah.
live in Midland. And so you have many offices in the DFW area, but also Austin, Midland, where else?
We have Dallas, Plano, Fort Worth, Granbury, and now Midland.
Oh, that's exciting.
Yes, we're growing.
So where do you personally work?
Yes, I work out of our Dallas office, which is kind of a hub for North Texas, right? So I handle cases all over the DFW metropolitan area. I have a couple of Fort Worth cases right now, McKinney, Rockwall, just like you, I'm sure.
Well, we will put on the screen how to reach you.
Wonderful.
I highly recommend Lindsey. Thank you for being with us.
Thanks for having me today. This was really fun.
Oh, you're welcome. That's a wrap. So go get your AI and see what creative things you can do with it. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.